All right, let's get right into it. The phrase information disclosure. It sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? Information gets disclosed. But as you're about to find out, the how and the why it gets out splits this whole idea into two completely different worlds.
So when you hear that phrase, what's the very first thing that pops into your head? I'm guessing for most of us, especially today, our minds immediately go to cybersecurity. And, it's usually not a good thing.
For a lot of people, the first word that comes to mind is leak, a data leak. It's that awful, sinking feeling you get in your stomach when a company you do business with suddenly announces a breach. This is that accidental, unintentional side of the story.
Yeah, it's all about unauthorized exposure. This is information ending up in the hands of people who should never, ever have seen it. It means a failure of security, right? A crack in the digital armor.
And here we have the sort of textbook definition from the cybersecurity world. Information disclosure, or leakage, is when a system, a website, an app, accidentally reveals sensitive info. The key word there is unintentionally. This isn't planned, it's a mistake, a vulnerability waiting to be found.
So what exactly are we talking about here? Well, it could be anything, really. It might be personal data about users, your username, financial details, or it could be a company's own secret business data. But sometimes it's the technical stuff, things that sound minor, like database table names or, API keys that a developer accidentally left in the code. And that stuff, that might seem small, but it can be the one missing puzzle piece an attacker needs to launch a way bigger attack.
Okay, so that leads to the really important question, right? How does this even happen? And more importantly, what's the actual fallout when it does?
Well, leaks tend to happen in two main ways. On the one hand, you've got the tech failures, software bugs, servers that aren't configured properly, or, systems that just haven't been updated with the latest patches. But then, on the other hand, there's us, the human element. An employee accidentally shares the wrong file, someone falls for a phishing scam, or a company laptop gets lost or stolen.
And the consequences? They are serious. For us, as consumers, a data leak can mean years of worrying about identity theft, dealing with credit card fraud, and just the sheer headache of fixing it all. And for the organizations, it's a total catastrophe. We're talking lost business, a reputation that's just trashed, and of course, huge costs from lawsuits and trying to recover.
But what if we just flip this whole idea on its head? Let's turn the coin over and look at the other, completely different side of information disclosure.
What if the information isn't an accidental leak at all? What if it's released on purpose for everyone to see? What if it's not just intentional, but actually required?
This is what we call mandatory disclosure, and it is the polar opposite of a leak. In this case, information is released deliberately, usually because a law or regulation says it has to be. The goal here isn't to hide anything, it's to bring things out into the open, to create transparency so we can all make better, more informed choices.
And honestly, you see this stuff everywhere once you start looking. It's the annual financial report a public company has to publish. It's the ESG report that details a company's environmental footprint. It's the nutrition label on your food. Or a doctor having to tell you if they have a conflict of interest. It's all about making important information public.
So we have these two completely opposite ideas, right? The accidental leak versus the intentional reveal. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, when these two worlds don't just exist separately, but actually collide. And the perfect example of this collision comes from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. They recently put a new rule into place that perfectly connects both types of disclosure we've been talking about. Check this out. The SEC now says that public companies have to disclose any cybersecurity incident they have if they decide it's material or, significant. Think about that for a second. An unintentional, accidental disclosure, a data breach, now legally triggers a mandatory intentional disclosure to the public. The two sides of the coin are now linked by law.
This whole push and pull between revealing information and hiding it, well, it naturally brings up some really fundamental questions about our rights and restrictions, questions about privacy versus secrecy.
So let's start with privacy. The World Medical Association gives us a really powerful example from the world of healthcare. They argue that your personal health information, well, it belongs to you and you alone. And this quote just says it all perfectly. The right to privacy is really all about one thing: control. It means you, as an individual, get to decide how information about you is used and who it's shared with. It's a basic, fundamental right. But on the other side of that, you have the idea of secrecy, which is often enforced with a legal tool you've probably heard of, a non-disclosure agreement, or NDA. Now, an NDA isn't about an individual's right to privacy. It's a contract, a legal obligation that forces someone to keep an organization's information secret.
So, you see these two forces constantly pushing against each other. On one side, you have the right to privacy, which is all about empowering the individual to control their own information, and on the other, you have the agreement to secrecy, which is about protecting an organization's information. Both are about controlling information, but they come from totally different places with very different power dynamics at play.
And it turns out, this constant balancing act, what do we reveal, what do we keep hidden, it has some pretty wild and unexpected effects on human psychology.
Yeah, researchers have found some really strange things happen when you force disclosure. There's something called the telltale heart effect, where companies that are forced to share something negative, well, they tend to overestimate how much the public is actually paying attention. And so they clean up their act way more than they might have to. But there's a dark side too. It's called moral licensing. This is where, say, an advisor discloses a conflict of interest and then feels freer to give you biased advice because, hey, they technically warned you, right?
And that leaves us with one final and really critical question. We live in this digital world that is just flooded with data. Information can be a tool for good, but it can also be a weapon. So, who gets to decide? Who draws the line between what should be transparent and what should be secret? The individual, the company, the government? Figuring that out is one of the biggest challenges we face today.